This morning we've got, is it this morning? No, it's not. This afternoon we've got Gill Smith with us, who is a performance and mindset coach. So she's going to tell you a little bit about that shortly. But Gill is also an ex-teacher, so I wanted to bring Gill on partly because she's fun to chat with anyway, but to tell her story and to share with you the journey that she's gone through. So good afternoon, Gill. Nice.
Oh, hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. It's really nice.
So can you, I'm this isn't going to be a surprise to me because I know your story, but can you share your story, the sort of run up to and the exit from teaching for us?
Yeah, of course. Okay. Well, it's almost 5 years ago now, October 2015. I was a deputy head. It was my second deputy headship at a very large school in Lancashire. And things were okay. It wasn't a terrible place to work, but the pressure at the time, it was all around the Gove curriculum change, and it was that, and being a curriculum deputy, when you're dealing with all that uncertainty and everybody having to rewrite all their schemes of work and all of that, it was incredibly high pressured at the time, as it is all of the time. And you know when they say teachers like break up for holidays and then they get sick?
Yeah.
Well, in the October half term of 2015, we broke up on the Friday, and on the Sunday I was out with my two daughters at swimming lessons, and I had a heart attack while I was poolside watching my youngest daughter have her swimming lesson.
Still getting that.
At the age, I'm 48 now, so I was 43 years old. I'm fit and healthy, thought I was. I'm not a big drinker. I'm not a smoker. I've always done sport, but I'm not an extreme sport person either. So sometimes, people who do a lot of extreme sport experience this, but it was, to say worrying was an understatement, because when something like that happens, I didn't realise what was happening to me at the time, but intuition, sort of after I'd started to get pains in my chest, pain in my neck, as soon as it spread to my left shoulder, I just knew something was seriously wrong. So without just being the typical woman and just thinking, all right, no, I'll be okay, let's get the kids home and then I'll sort them out first and I'm bottom of the list, I actually drove my car and drove the kids. But as I was driving the car, I thought something's wrong, and I diverted and went to a walk-in centre. It was a Sunday, it was closed, I was hammering the door down. Thankfully, somebody came in, and within, I would say, 15 minutes after an ECG, I was being blue lighted off to hospital. My poor kids had to witness that. They were 6 and 10 at the time, and they were left in the walk-in while they tried to get hold of family, and that was it. I was off. So I don't remember much else on that particular day, but it was an enormous wake-up call. I was very lucky. I found out later there's a kind of scale of heart attacks. It was critical level. It was really high. And when I woke up and came round, and I had a number of days in hospital, there was an enormous amount of emotion, tears, upset, trying to process this. And the nurses, I'll never forget this, said to me, there are more and more women in their 40s appearing on this ward. And it was at that point I thought, I can't go back to teaching. I can't do it, because with all the tests and everything that they did all the angiogram into my heart. There was no blockage. I didn't need a stent. There was nothing that they could fix. And the cardiologist, two separate cardiologists, both agreed that this was stress and pressure. And my body had literally just been filling up with stress. And I'm not a stressed kind of person. I never took time off. I've always been really positive and happy. But that's the danger, because we all experience it, but we don't acknowledge it. We sort of deny that it's happening. And it was filling up and filling up and filling up until eventually all my bodily systems just cracked. Hormonal clash, adrenal fatigue, the whole lot, boom, resulted in this heart attack. So yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Oh my God. What was the recovery process from that?
So, I mean, it was a very long process because I was deemed to be at risk because I couldn't be fixed with a stent. I had to be monitored very, very closely. Literally, my coronary artery went into spasm, and that's what caused the blockage.
Right.
And that's as a result of stress and so on. Now, I don't have high blood pressure or anything, but having read some articles only recently, it's actually very common in women. And I look back, Sarah, and there were so many signs and symptoms of things that I was ignoring.
Really?
So I was suffering with migraines. I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes at some blood tests because I wasn't eating well when I was teaching. I was, you don't eat at all most of the time. You're on duty, you're running around. And I suffered with labyrinthitis, which is like a vertigo type thing. And when the cardiologist sat me down, he said, all of these things that you've seen as separate things have all been signs that your body is under enormous pressure and stress. And that's why this interview to me is so important, because I don't want to scare people and say you're going to have a heart attack. But equally, we are not supermen and we are not superwomen. And when these things happen, we have to take note and listen to our bodies, and we have to start to look after ourselves.
That's a massive thing in the group, and more so since term has started back. I mean, obviously, there was a lot of people over the summer with a lot of anxiety about going back in September, but there's been so many people that Sharon and I have commented on, and other group members have, about essentially there's only one you know, your health has to come first, and whether that's mental health or whether it's physical health or whether it's a combination of both, you have to listen to it, because we don't as teachers do it. I mean, I think I've said to you the number I had, 6 or 7, I've lost count, 6 or 7 surgeries in the space of 5 years. And after every single one of those, I was back emailing to and fro with school within an hour of coming out of recovery, because, you know, things still needed doing. And we don't listen to ourselves.
You're so right. And actually, do you know, that day when this happened to me, poolside, I was actually marking books like we do. And I remember when I woke up in the hospital, I said to my husband, there's a set of books somewhere. Where's that set of books? And he was like, are you serious? And I was like, I didn't finish marking my books. He was just like, oh my God. And actually, I think that I genuinely, I think everybody does this, but certainly in leadership, I was obsessed with presenteeism. And I was like the first in school and the last to leave, and I would do all the events. And I look back now and think, what the heck was I doing? Because I thought that was me being a good deputy head and being there for the staff and showing my support. But culturally, that was a really big mistake. And I should have been teaching our staff and sharing and helping everybody to see that that wasn't the point. I was allowing them to not be there because I was ironically in charge of staff wellbeing. So I was really hot on making sure they didn't attend everything, and we had a really good policy, and the school was a happy school. But personally, for myself, I just kept going and going and going and didn't see anything of this coming. So,
and it's that culture of it's. We were talking about my friends and I were talking about this the other day, whether there is a book somewhere that tells bad senior leaders how to be bad senior leaders, but I think there is actually a culture that came from perhaps NCSL when the MPQH first started, that whole walking the talk, and that turned into a monster in terms of, as a leader, if you're not doing everything, then you're not setting the right example for your staff. And actually that's completely topsy-turvy, isn't it?
Completely.
Yeah.
You're so right. And I did go through all of that. I did my MPQH, went through, and you're so right. That walk the talk was everywhere. Yeah. And now 5 years since I've been in school, I hoped things would have changed. You know, I go into schools and I work with staff and teachers, and I do tell my story and I do wellbeing stuff. And, you know, it's really, I'm busy doing that kind of work, but it hasn't changed. If anything, I think it's getting worse, and you only have to look in your Facebook group to see, certainly with COVID, how this is now affecting everybody.
Totally. I think, I mean, I'm always, I always want to keep a balance with this, and I have said it before, that for every school that is highly charged and highly stressful and toxic, that there is another school that has got it right in terms of staff well-being and welfare. And but I think as well that the whole sort of, and I think they all came about at the same time, the MPQH, NCSL, leading from the middle, all of that stuff,
Leadership pathways,
yeah, all of that. And I've got all of my folders underneath my desk in terms of the coaching that I give people on those pathways. And I look at my notes now and think, oh, actually you were I was quite gentle and supportive, but I know that other people weren't. But I think at the same time, the Every Child Matters agenda came to the fore, which was right and proper, but that got bastardized as well into children come first at the expense of the adults in the building. And unless you get it right for your adults, you're not going to get it right for the kids, are you? And I just think the whole thing somewhere just got put in a tombola, shaken up, and oh, we'll do it like this.
Great description. And we all do our best, don't we? And we go along, and we go along with whatever the government wants us to do, and we adapt and we change, and that's the nature of teaching. But for me, the message is really clear that it's, if we don't put our own oxygen mask on first, it's the old analogy, then you're going to end up like I did. You know, I'm very lucky to be alive. I literally, the whole gratitude thing for me now, I wake up, the first thing I do each morning is, my heart still beating? Yes, it is. Are my kids okay? Because you can imagine the trauma my girls have been through as I've recovered and had to adjust our lives and take a new path. It's been really hard, really challenging. Yeah. It was that, actually, Sarah. It was my children's faces that day that I knew I could never put them through that again, and it was that meant I had to make the decision to leave the profession, and I would never have done that. So I don't know now whether I might have done, but at the time I was reasonably happy. I'm not saying I was over the moon ecstatic every day, because that's not reality. but I was I had a nice head teacher. It was a great senior leadership team, fantastic staff that I worked with. All the heads of department, couldn't have asked for better. Great school, great results. So we were on the right path. However, I wasn't taking care of myself, and ultimately it's my responsibility, nobody else's.
Absolutely. And that taking personal responsibility is hard, because it's always being gate crashed by guilt, isn't it? What are the kids, if I'm not there, what are the kids getting? What about that staff team that I manage? What about this? What about that? And nobody, I don't think I just don't think it's in us as teachers to put ourselves first. I don't think at any point along the way we see that behaviour as self-care rather than being selfish.
Yeah.
And it's that, and we get private messages on a daily basis that are, I had one last week, and honestly, I get at least one a week where it makes me cry about how desperate it is, and all of the time it is because that person is putting everything else and everybody else before what they know to be true about themselves, which is that they're not well.
Yes, this is it. Exactly. And I think my biggest learning point would be that I never rested. I never rested. So I didn't rest at the weekends. I didn't recharge in the holidays. I was constant. And I think the nature of my job meant that I had to be in school in the holidays. But that's my biggest takeaway, hopefully, for people, is just to prioritise that day of rest on a Sunday or whatever it is that you need to do, because I think that would have made all the difference to me. As hard as the job is, I was constantly running on empty. I didn't your battery's here, and I'm going into school on a Monday with my battery here, so how am I going to cope for the rest of that week? So that's kind of where I am. But I'm not there now, and I don't, it's so sad. It's so sad for the...
So tell me what the journey's been, because it's been 5 years. So
yeah,
we'll meander.
Meander through 5 years. So yeah, the recovery took a long time, because it was really hard to kind of for the cardiologist to believe that I was okay, to be let loose into the community again. So all my exercise, cardiac rehab, all of that was monitored. I'm a swimmer. I wasn't allowed anywhere near a pool because they couldn't monitor me, and very, very strict because of my age and the circumstances. However, I started to recover, and my head was completely against anything teaching and the whole profession, because in my mind, teaching had nearly killed me. And I still believe that. I really do. As hard as that sounds, I don't think if I'd done another job, it would have been quite so pressurised.
Oh.
So I retrained in massage therapies because I'm into sport. I thought I'm going to go and do sport massage. It's something completely different. I can still work with athletes, young people, the circle, but it's also beneficial physically and emotionally for me too, to be involved in that kind of environment. And I retrained in massage, and I also trained in mindfulness, because that for me had been quite instrumental in my recovery, and really starting to appreciate the moment and appreciating now, and not worrying about the future, because I didn't feel I could ever think about the future again, and trying not to dwell on the past because it was so traumatic. And also at the time of setting up in massage and mindfulness, wellbeing, holistic therapies, I've always been a swim coach, and I did bits of swim coaching on the side to bring in income. Did do a little bit of private tuition because I needed the money, and it's good money. I mean, people were willing to pay good money, and I was able to kind of keep my income buoyant through the training. That went really well. We ended up having a big company, Connect Health and Wellbeing. I won awards because we really focused on empowering women, because of the female heart attack thing being very different to a male heart attack. Most men will have a cardiac arrest and fall off the chair. Women, it's quite silent. They call it the silent killer in women. I was very keen on making sure that we were empowering women, so I employed a female personal trainer, put her through her training. She worked with me. I took on young females to become swim coaches and grew the business. And that was going really well, but the only downside was that it was very antisocial hours.
Right.
Because I was working with athletes, and pool hire and all of those physical things were an issue. The massage practice, people want weekends, they want evenings. Yeah. And so it started to become quite challenging. And so I wouldn't say don't do it. Definitely, it's a great option for teachers to go into holistic therapies and that side of things. But you need your boundaries. You need to be really clear. And then the mindset work, the mindfulness, that just kept growing and growing. And more parents were coming to me saying, my child's struggling with exams, my child's struggling with their sport, the arts, drama, word of mouth. People knew me because I'd been the deputy head in the community. And that was where I started to put my energies. So I took my business online, developed some online programs, so that generates passive income. I was able to then do the coaching one-to-one online. And looking back now with COVID, thank goodness I was in that position and able to continue my business. And through lockdown, it's become apparent now, my focus is now very much with parents. So I'm working with stressed out mums, really, people who are struggling with the children at home or the job situation, their own pressures, their own well-being. And I'm coaching one-to-one mums. I'm also coaching some teachers, and I'm working with families. We have like a group program. Most of them have got competitive children doing sport and activities and things, but others it's just that they're struggling with school. And through all of that, opportunities have just come along for freelance. So I go and I do training in schools. I've been really fortunate. I did a whole resilience and wellbeing program with the NHS pre-COVID. I've been working with the police. I actually got to work with the team who did the Manchester Arena attack. And did a resilience program with them around coping with that and the aftermath. That was a big project. I'm about to do some work with care home workers in Cumbria, managers of care home workers. So that comes along. So that whole thing around wellness, positive mindset, it's drawing on my own experience, because to go through what I've been through was not easy. Yeah. To walk away from my career was not easy. To no money. I did not get a pension. It was not something that, was offered. And you got to be on your deathbed, and it was about just trying to learn from what I've been through, pass that knowledge on, help other people. And I kind of devoured all things wellness, well-being, and got qualifications in that field. So it's sort of all slotting together now, and that's where I am. But like you, Sarah, I don't close doors. Things just pop up. Things come along. It's just been really positive and a great experience, but challenging. Yeah. Because you've not got your salary. I'm not going to say it's easy. Not easy. But then when you have the good months, you kind of have to budget and put money aside. And there's always the tuition to fall back on.
Yeah. But the trade-off is knowing that you're living a healthier lifestyle, isn't it, in terms of your stress levels and stuff. That's scary. It's scary.
It has been a trade-off. I am living a healthier life. I've never felt better. I see my children. My eldest is now going through a GCSE, so the fact I can be here and be with her in this time has been phenomenal. It has been a really interesting ride. You've got to be resourceful. You've got to just dig in and find a way. And there is money to be made. You've just got to find the way. And I've had certainly when I had the wellbeing business at the start and I was doing the massage, I didn't even have to worry about the income. It just came. It's when you start to go freelance that your projects are more sporadic. And coaching wise, I've got a great client base now that's there and established, and I've got regulars. So, but that could all end at any time. People lose their jobs, they cut back. So you've got to be prepared for all eventualities.
Absolutely. So what would you say has been the steepest learning curve with being freelance?
I think it's around boundaries. I think a lot of the people that I work with are struggling, obviously, and I think most of us are. That's nothing to be ashamed of. I wish I'd noticed that I was, and I'd put my hand up and asked for help. But it's around boundaries, because when I've got clients who I'm working with on, I take the projects in the NHS that I was doing. I won't name the area or the department, but those people that I was working with, I became very close to, very attached to. I was going visiting them every couple of weeks. And then, of course, they start to message and they want support. And I'm not paid in that time to provide that support. And as hard as that is, it's like, where do you draw the line between this is what I'm being paid to do? Of course, I'm there for you. But then I've also need to protect my personal space and my personal energies. And I think that's the hardest thing. But when you want to keep your clients happy and you're relying on word of mouth and you want people to receive value and a good service, you can't help, as a teacher, I think, a caregiving profession, to be there on the end of the phone all the time. So I've had to kind of lay it out with clients and say, look, this is when I'm available. My phone goes in a drawer on Sundays. I'm sorry, but if you want me, contact me on a Monday, on my email. No more messenger. It's trying to just be a little bit savvy, and that's, I guess, is my greatest tip.
Thank you. That's useful for me. That is the problem, isn't it? Is that I'm if you're anything like me, I don't like saying no to people, and I'll do that at the expense of doing things myself. So people will say to me, oh, you need to do this, and this, or stop doing X, Y, and Z. But actually, they are people who then contribute to the X, Y, and Z. They're the people who are mithering or genuinely asking for help. Mithering sounds negative. And actually it's like, but I can't say no to those people.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to upset them. But actually, and that's me. That's not them. That's me not setting my boundaries. And I think I just don't want to upset anybody and want to avoid confrontation or conflict at any cost. And again, the danger with that is that the cost is to your own well-being, isn't it? Your own
Again. Yeah, and I think people who are going into private tuition, it's the same. You're going to get parents who suddenly think you're on tap, and getting those messages, and it's just having a really clear, that would be my tip, a really clear system about when you're available, how they can contact you, and actually try and avoid the phone stuff if you can, because it's just there all the time, isn't it? And you can be out with your family on a Sunday and it's like being back at school, getting all the emails coming in, and
and it is that it is that sort of fine line to tread, isn't it? Because I mean, I'm a bugger for having my phone with me all of the time, but I've actually in the last couple of weeks got better at, it goes on mute at 9 o'clock, so then I am absolutely in control of checking it. But also, like, if we go out for a meal with my boy and his girlfriend, there's kind of an unspoken, you don't get your phone out whilst we're eating. So it's just those things. But again, it's other people's expectations that if you don't respond like that, that you're being rude. Well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm doing something. I've got
Yes, and I would say, you're right, Sarah, that I always say to myself first, what's my priority?
Yeah.
My priority is my health and my children. And the expectations that other people have of me, then it's my role to make that clear, what they can expect of me, that aligns with my priorities and my values. So I think it's a tip whether you're in school or not, isn't it? That one, you just need to be really clear, and hopefully good head teachers and good deputy head teachers will respect and understand that. But I know a lot of people in your group aren't that lucky. And
no, I mean, some are, I think some are in situations that are okay. But yeah, it's that whole, as soon as you start putting people together, the mishmash of expectations and the way that they conflict with each other, and it's just a mess, isn't it?
I know.
To go awry. But coming back to you, positive, 5 years on.
Yes.
All right. And how has COVID impacted on? Has it?
On the business. So a lot of my work is with young athletes and so on. So when all the sports stopped and pools closed and all of that side of things really dried up for a while. But I was able, luckily through my contacts and networks, to keep the links with lots of parents, and I started to provide parental support groups and parental programs online. And still then a lot of clients came back to me saying, oh, it's not about sport now, Gill, but can you work with my child on coping with online schooling or their resilience, their lack of social connections? And so I was able to kind of pivot a little bit and adjust my offer. But my company is now called Connect Coaching, and so my remit is wider. It isn't just about sport and those people. It's all kinds of stuff around mindset, positivity, performance, coping, and basically about like I feel I've done, like turning your life around. I wouldn't have left teaching. I wouldn't have walked from the salary and the pension and all of that. But when you're suddenly faced with a reason to go, as stark as mine was, I've had to put my big girl pants on and I've had to get out there and find a way to make money. And when you've got to make money, you will make money. And I think that's the bit I need to say to people is, don't be afraid to take the leap. You can always go back. It never loses you. Teaching is always there, isn't it? And
it it is. And I think similarly, I made a pact with myself, because my crisis was different, but it was still very much a kind of life or death situation in terms of where my mental health was. But I made a conscious decision with myself that I was never going to have to use the reference that I would need to have from my final place of work, because I don't want anything to do with them at all. So that's one of the things that drives me. But the other thing as well, have you gone through, so I've gone through with my coach, and I'm sat here looking at it now. I've got a 10-year plan on my wall, which is like 3 bullet points for each sort of block of time, and that's there with me every day now. So my big sort of 10-year vision for the future is a daily reminder of what it is that's driving me. Have you gone through a process like that, or have you has it kind of just rolled? How have you
Good question. It's kind of rolled, to be honest, Sarah. I think that because of what happened to me, I'm quite averse to making plans because I had all my career mapped out. You know, I'd done my NPQH, it was my second deputy headship. I was going to go and be a head teacher. That was my plan, and that was cut short. And now I think while my children are still at home, I'm quite sort of happy to be flexible, and people know what I do. I'm out there and I'm getting freelance contracts. So for now, I'm quite happy. And I do sort of fly by the seat of my pants a little bit and let it roll. And I tend to work on an annual plan. I think this is what I'd like to achieve in the next 12 months, but that went out of the window with COVID. So there you go. Another reason not to plan. Yeah. But I will say this, I definitely do 90-day plans.
Yes.
So I tend to look at the next 3 months, a 90-day plan, and then I break that down into my monthly goals, and that keeps me focused and stops me procrastinating. It keeps me feeling like I know where I'm going to get business. I know when I'm going to get sales. It keeps me focused on that. It's a bit like a school development plan.
Well, it's a quarterly goals, isn't it? Because I'd just done one just before COVID, and then ripped it up, obviously. But I've done, there's another one now for one of my businesses, and I've kind of, the photography, I'm just kind of going, well, that can roll, that can do what it wants. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But the coaching, it's the one that's got the big monster plan at the moment. But yeah, it's interesting that it's different styles for different people, isn't it? But there is some sort of steps along the way that you're thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, my current project is helping busy mums. Actually, that's where I am, because all the sports mums, that's my focus. I can see that going now for the next 12 months. It really suits me. It's around stress management, the mums who feel like me, exactly, busy professional mums who are constantly just juggling and want to find a bit of joy in the juggling. That's where I am now. But I can't, I don't know whether I'll go back into schools. I'm not at the moment, obviously, because of COVID. The care home people that I'm working with, it's all online. So things are just popping up. And I meant to say, actually, as well, I wrote 2 books as well in the last 4 years. I did. They were crazy charity books. It was all about being a swim mum and total juggling of being a mum and all of that. But that was something else that was on the bucket list. So I'm trying just to, I quite fancy that, and I'll tick things over. And now I fancy this, and I let it go, because my plans, when it was all set in stone, never came to fruition, and I ended up disappointed. So I'm a little bit more free now.
And how does that feel?
I'm confident enough now, I think, that I can always find a way to bring an income in, even if it is to go back to doing tuition or swim coaching stuff. The pools are back open. I can still go and do my massage if I need to, and I have a couple of people that I still treat. So I'm not too worried. I like to think that my life is on a bit of a journey, and it's quite exciting not knowing where it's going to go next. But as long as I know I've got income and I can sort of feed the kids for the next 12 months, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I get that. That's fab. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you. Right,
I don't want to scare people though, Sarah.
No, but that's the reality. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? With certainly with women's heart health, it's we don't manifest symptoms in the same way. You know, it's not that TV drama, clutch your heart, clutch your arm, off you pop.
No, it really isn't. And they don't think it's genetic with me either. I've got no family history. So it was just like a freak thing, the coronary artery spasm, but it's been in the press recently as being a growing thing. So
and is it to do with sort of consistently overloading our systems with adrenaline and is that what it is?
Yeah, cortisol, adrenaline, never having any respite, just not resting at all. And not emptying is, imagine, I always use this at training, it's a stress pot. We're like a pot, and every day there's a drop going in, another one. And if we're not emptying it out by exercise or rest or whatever it may be, then it'll just overflow like mine did. But I'm here to tell the tale, yeah. Thankfully. I survived. So, and now I actually think, weirdly, it's a blessing now. I'm kind of like, do you know what? I'm much happier than I was then. So this is all good.
That's the perfect way to end it. The gift in the challenge.
Yeah, you will come through it. People who are struggling, you will get through it. Absolutely. Just got to believe. All in the mindset.
Yeah, and the work. Because you do have to work at it, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, it's not easy. I'm a hard worker, definitely. I don't think that ever leaves us as teachers, does it? But it's certainly worth it if you can be resilient and persist.
And it's and that I say that to people. The work isn't just about the work to bring money in. It's the work on yourself, isn't it? It's the being deliberate about giving yourself 15 minutes in the morning to sit and just be, or 15 minutes at night to journal. They're deliberate actions that you have to form habits with, and that takes work. And I think this is where mindfulness and mindset is so important, but it can't be a bolt on. It has to become like an intrinsic part of your life. Sharon talks about it all the time, about her daily gratitudes and the fact that she makes time for meditation absolutely every single day, and it's a habit. And unless you do that, it's only a sticking plaster, isn't it? If you just pay lip service to it, it's only a sticking plaster.
Absolutely. Cool.
Right.
There we go. Thank you, Sarah.
You're more than welcome. Let me just stop this recording.